What are you thinking of the Leafs these days? You watched the game last night. Seemed to be a pretty solid effort.
Of course, I watched the game last night. I live in Nova Scotia now, and I am getting used to these start times. So, like, I heard people in the Eastern time zone complaining about the 8 o'clock start. It was a 9 o'clock start for me. I was
Brutal.
like, what are we doing here? This is going to be tough. But no, I love the game. I mean, William Nylander, I just cannot get enough of this guy. I have always been such a big Willie Styles supporter. But that friggin' play on the goal was unbelievable. And I had no idea that he's top 10 in Ozone Puck Battles won this year. They said that on the broadcast last night. And I'm like, wait, isn't Nylander the guy that like never gets into the battles? This is what we always say about him. Not this year.
Not on contract years, I guess.
Yeah, he's just, I mean, he's playing on a different planet. My mind was wandering last night thinking about how can they sign Nylander and keep everybody intact? I just don't think they can. And then I looked at number 16. I'm like, oh, maybe it's Marner.
Well, listen, if they could finally, reach the mountaintop and hit the very, very high expectations, I'll be down for whatever they got to do, because if they win it all, then whatever.
Hey, you must be fired up about Joseph Woll's start, eh?
Wall stands tall. I won't call him Wool ever. It's not Wool for me. It's Wall. He is the brick wall, as they say. I'm so excited. I am absolutely the type of fan that, not just of the Leafs, just in hockey in general, that gets excited even over small sample sizes. And I think we need to stop doing this thing where we're like, oh, you can't be excited about that because it's only been a few games and he's only played so many games. Like, get out of here with this. Being a sports fan is supposed to be fun. If I want to be dramatic and be like, Joseph Woll's the best goalie the Leafs have had since Cujo, let me enjoy that. Let me have that excitement. Let me be dramatic. I thought that's what being a sports fan was about. I'm over like this. You can't be excited about anything the Leafs do because they haven't won it all yet. I'm just over that narrative, and I think we need to throw it in the trash because it's a garbage take. So I don't, if you're on Twitter and you follow me and you see me get excited about a Nylander goal or an Austin Matthews hat trick or a Joseph Woll performance, I do not want to see in my mentions, well, let's see what they do in April. Let's see what they do in the playoffs. So what? I'm just supposed to be miserable for 82 games?
Agreed. Bold statements are A-okay with Jackie O. Same thing on Twitter. I said something about Woll too, and people are like, are you kidding me? You know better than to get excited with this sample size. I'm like, I'm not talking about the future at all. I'm completely aware that things could go downhill or change at any point in time. But if you were to start back before he played an NHL game and say, okay, here's, I don't know, what has he played? Like 12 NHL games? In his first 10, what do you want to see? And if that's the question, and then he shows us what it is, we can be completely elated about that because he's been fantastic. That's all you're saying. I can get excited about this sample size. Not saying anything about down the road, or you're not oblivious to the fact that it could go south at some point. You're allowed to be excited about what you see right in front of you. Silly Twitter.
Yeah. Here's a tip. Like, we can be excited about right now. And if things go south, we can be miserable about it then. Why do we have to have pre-misery? Like, why do we have to like rid ourselves of happiness about things that are actually happening right now? So that's kind of my mindset this year, of trying to just like enjoy the good things while they're happening instead of, worrying about what's going to happen in 5 months.
I will say I love you both because your optimism. Because I'm the eternal pessimist. I've always been that way. And Rosie always gets fired up because I'm like, these fucking regular season games don't matter. But thank you very much, Jackie. I appreciate that. They don't.
Did it work a little bit? Are you feeling a little bit of positivity in those negative veins, or?
I try to level myself because I know the next game the Leafs might not show up, and that scares the hell out of me. I won't lie.
You've been hurt so many times.
I mean, listen, all Leafs fans have a little bit of, post-traumatic stress and things that they have to deal with, scars that maybe they haven't taken the time in the off season to properly heal, to prepare for a fresh start and a fresh slate. But the only thing that matters is that, and Jay, like, you could speak to this better than any of us, is all that matters is that the players in that room feel good about their season and feel good about their goalie and feel confident going out there every night. So what the fan base thinks, what the media thinks, doesn't really matter. All that matters is that Joseph Woll believes in himself. The guys in front of him believe that he can be a starter at the NHL level, and that they are not worried about old wounds, and hopefully that they've healed. I don't know. We'll see.
100,
I'm very
100%.
positive today.
My
I like
biggest
it.
thing with this show is we're in an era right now that you're not going to get back. Like, you're going to go through a rebuilding period. I don't know how long down the road it's going to be. So if you're not enjoying this right now, you're going to look back and say, oh God, remember when we were good? Remember when everyone was, excited about them, but all I did was knock them down and say they're not good enough. And, oh, you just wait till April. And you do that long enough. I mean, that's palpable in the room. I remember playing for that team, and we'd go on a little 3-game winning streak, and it would be like, no, not good enough, not happening. Sorry, they're not the team. And it's like, Jesus, like, can you just judge us on our merit right now on how we're doing? Like, yeah, that's a great game. Hopefully they keep it going. No, you got to knock them down 24/7. And I promise you, Leafs fans, if you love and follow this team, which the people who say, no, you can't get too excited because I'm going to get hurt again, obviously they are fans of the team. Don't wish this time away, folks, because they're hot. They're at the top of the league. They're one of the premier teams going right now, and don't wish it away because it's not going to be here forever. Wise words.
Wise words.
I think so.
I was just going to add
Preach.
too, like, Jackie, you've worked in this market, this market. Rosie, you played for this team. There's just something about Joseph Woll and Matthew Nyes that makes me believe they can handle the pressure that comes with playing for the Maple Leafs. No,
I think the jury is still out. I
Yeah.
mean, Jay, you could speak way better to this, having actually played in the market and dealt with the type of pressure that comes with. But I just think until you're in it, until you are feeling the pressure mounting and things aren't going well and you have to dig yourself out of it, I think that's when you find out, what you're made of and if you have the capacity mentally to deal with it. With Matthew Nyes, I'm less concerned. I just think for goalies in general, it's just
Yeah.
a harder go mentally, no matter who you are or where you play. So for Joseph Woll, and we saw this, I'm not comparing the two, to be clear, for Twitter, but
There we
like,
go.
when you're coming in and you're battling for a spot and you haven't really got a shot yet, you haven't got a chance necessarily to take over a net at the NHL level, that's a different place to be strategically in your mind than when you actually have the job and you're the guy and you're expected to carry the play down the stretch, and then you're going to start every game in the first round and you are the guy. It's one thing to get to the spot, it's another thing to keep it. And I think in Toronto, we'll find out what Joseph Woll is made of, because right now he looks like a guy that is dead set on being like, this is my net. I want to be the number one guy. And then we'll see how he handles that pressure once it starts to mount. But I do think that it's a different thing entirely when you're competing for the spot as opposed to when you actually have it.
Yeah, for sure. There's some about these younger generation of players. I got plenty of knocks to throw their way with the way they handle themselves, but some about them, they don't seem to adhere to the pressure as much as other people. They're more like individualistic. They're used to being front and center, whether that's social media or what it is, but they don't seem to be bothered as much as people in the past. That's just what I feel like. You see Nyes comes in, he's just like, yeah, whatever, I'm just going to go do my thing. And Woolsey's just like, yeah, I'm ready. I'm going to do my thing. And again, so far they have shown no sign of having anything but that in their minds. And I think it's just with that generation, they're used to being on stage, they're used to having lots of people look at them, they're used to being judged, and I think that comes from growing up with social media, maybe. But
yeah,
they
that's
seem
a
to be
good point.
solid. Yeah, so far so good.
They're used to having people kind of comment on their games and being able to like read what people are saying on, whether it's online or even just on Instagram and Twitter and whatever's going on within their bubble of like growing up in high school and having everyone has an opinion on something or someone. So maybe there's something to that, like just from a psychological standpoint. But how about Matty Nyes? What an interesting roller coaster of a game for him last night. But I don't care about any of the bad stuff, because that play at the blue line was chef's kiss. So like I popped for that. I was out of my chair. Just like, did he just do that? I loved it. I loved it.
That's me every time the second power play unit scores, right? Like, you always think so in-depthly, and rightfully so, about PP1, but every time PP2 scores, I'm like, yes, this is fantastic.
Huge.
And since we're on that topic, like Tyler Bertuzzi, what is your read on some of the newer players on this team, like Domi and Bertuzzi and others?
Well, I feel a lot better right now than I did probably about 7 or 8 days ago. My whole thing with them and with, the depth of the lineup in general is that I just hope that as the season progresses and as, things, because we're going to have a bad stretch of hockey. It is inevitable. It will happen at some point because of injuries or season fatigue or a tough road trip, like whatever. It's going to happen. I just would really like to see Sheldon Keefe show faith in his lineup and give some of these guys an opportunity to get comfortable, to play with the same teammates consistently and not be thrown around all over the place. Like, I know that that's part of hockey. I know Sheldon Keefe is not the only head coach in the league to throw his lines in a blender or switch things up or change things around. But I do think, particularly when you're dealing with a player like Matthew Knies, who is new to the league, it's like, let them get some familiarity with their teammates. Obviously, you have to figure out what works and who has the best chemistry and works the best together. But I just hope that as the season progresses, we get a little bit more stability in the lineup as the season gets deeper and deeper and closer to the playoffs. Like, I'm sure, Jay, every player maybe feels differently about this, but I just think in years past, last year specifically, it's like going into the playoffs, and I know the deadline had a lot to do with it. It was like, I don't even know what our lines are and like who's playing with who. And like at one point, like who's playing center. Like we don't, I just think that we need to have that kind of figured out. And I think it will benefit players like Bertuzzi, like Domi, like Matthew Knies to kind of know their spot in the lineup and know what they're going to do. What do you think, Jay, as a player?
Yeah, well, like you say, every team's going to go through their highs and lows of a season. Every team in history has gone through little skids and little slumps where they don't have it. And one of the best things to do there is shake things up, right? You've been rolling with these lines. You've hit a funk. It's kind of become old hat. Okay, we're not feeling it like we were a few weeks ago. Let's mix it up here, and I'm going to throw this guy with this guy. I'm going to move this guy to the wing, and we're gonna mix it up and kind of reinvigorate. Everyone's going to kind of pull out of this rut that we're in. If you're doing that all season long, what do you have left to change when things aren't going well to give it a good look, right? Nothing, because I'm all for having everyone be able to play with everyone and having different looks. But man, with Sheldon Keefe, it's just too much, in my opinion. These guys don't have any time or chance or opportunity to get used to each other, to get the chemistry going. And when things go badly, what are you going to change if you've been throwing them in the blender all year long anyway? You're kind of sitting here going, I don't really know what to do because we're doing the same thing. We can't change anything because all we do is change things. So
let them cook. Let them cook.
We've been saying that for a while. We're not too happy with it, especially last year. Like you said, coming down to the 2 weeks before playoffs, we're still mixing them up like crazy. It's like, dude, are you going to get some solidarity in that lineup and have these guys know what's going to happen here?